Welcome to Behind the Build. I'm your host, Jonathan Jacobs. Today on the program, we have Jeffrey Douglas, the owner and founder of Douglas Design Studio. Jeffrey, thank you so much for joining. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much. It's a thrill to be here.
So Jeffrey and Walden, this is a podcast powered by Walden Homes. We have worked on a number of projects together. We have another one upcoming. It has been an absolute pleasure working with him. His design is exquisite. He's internationally award-winning in multiple segments over multiple years. So I know that you're busy. So creating time within your schedule to be able to do this, well, I'm just going to say now, thank you very much.
Well, yeah, it's a thrill. And I actually think it's a really, really good idea that you're doing this because you're creating a landscape for, I think, the industry that doesn't yet exist. And when I say landscape, we all know of other people that are working, but we don't know about those other people. We don't know each of their stories, and developing that kind of relationship and developing a little bit of a sense about who this industry is a terrific thing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the key goals of all of this was to be able to delve into not just the operations and, inspirations, but to humanize the people that I'm talking to, because what you do and what your contemporaries do is so vital to the landscape, literally the landscape of what we see every day and what we experience every day. So there's a lot of stories to be told from the people that are doing this.
And you partner up. I think that the industry itself is not, just the architect or just the designer that really leads the success of a project. It is the full team. And with every new project that comes on, if I'm at the beginning of the project, I will say the most important thing to do is to build a team that communicate well, that understand each other, that are speaking the same language and not working against each other, because we all come at this from different perspectives.
Yeah, I would agree. And that's probably one of the reasons why we work so well together.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do. And
that collaboration.
Yeah.
So I want to get into many things, as I do with everyone, and obviously time becomes a prohibitive factor in some of that, and the time does go very quickly in this. So I wanted to talk to you about the early inspiration in your life that kind of led you down the path to say, I want to become an interior designer. What was it for you that really set you on your path?
This is going to sound funny, but it started at the age of 6.
Yes.
And I was living in Etobicoke in the 1970s, and I was sitting in the back seat, and Mom's driving the car, and we're going down the Kingsway in the West End, and I was looking at the window at all these fanciful houses with the black and white that were so different than our house, and I said to Mom, I said, "What kind of house is that?" And she said, "Tudor." And I went home that day and I drew a Tudor house, and I labeled it Tooter, which my mom loves telling that story, but the Tudor house. But it was just a 6-year-old vision and idea. And from that point on, I started drawing houses in particular. Don't think I ever really, with my Lego set, did apartment buildings or, gymnasiums or hospitals. I guess the world in which my 6-year-old brain and 7, 8, 9-year-old brain lived in had no hospitals and no supermarkets. It was just houses, lots of houses. But I loved doing it. I loved a blank set of Lego, and I would build using blocks and create different kinds of structures. And I would pay attention to, the Brady Bunch and the house that they lived in. And, I was trying to figure out the layout of that house. And I remember in particular, when I was maybe 8 or 9, my parents got the idea that maybe they would check out a few subdivision homes, something with a little bit more space, maybe, quieter neighborhood, but
right.
Even though we were in a quiet neighborhood. And so they took me, I don't think I had any siblings with me, to, I forget the name, but imagine a place called Woodland Acres or something like that.
Sure.
And we toured the house, and I saw the brochure, and I was sitting in the back seat and I had the brochure, and I was looking at the renderer of it on the cover, and I was like, this is so incredible. How did they get the trees and the light and the way that they create shadow and use of color? And I just thought the whole thing was amazing. And then I flipped it open, and I was staring at the floor plans, and I was studying the floor plans plans. And then later that day, later that week, and then over the next couple of years, I was drawing floor plans of houses, imagining different layouts, imagining parents' retreats, imagining swimming pools. In fact, my favorite one is a full circular. Imagine more or less a donut shaped house where you have a circular structure. You enter in on one level, and each sort of section of that circle is a room. So you have the 2 steps up, you've got the living room, 2 steps up the dining room, 2 steps up the kitchen, and you sort of spiral up the house until you get to the primary bedroom. And then you go down a staircase to the main floor, and the pool was in the middle, and I worked out all the levels, and I'm 11.
I was going to say,
doing that. So
why aren't you building that house yet? You should be building that house on an amazing property.
I should. Although now I know there's a rather rich complexity to that kind of structure, and maybe that's not practical. And how do you curved glass? Of course, it's easy, and it is probably doable. But at the same time, it's like one of those things. But I have a whole bunch of things like that I conceived and thought about and imagined. And so being a kid, being a kid, also growing up in the 70s, and being gay and being the kind of kid that was bullied a lot. I spent a lot of time on my own. I spent a lot of time drawing and sketching. And the act of that created this incredibly vivid inner world that I had. Mm-hmm. And I got to say, one of the big things that I think I got as a benefit from such an experience was that I was able to explore my inner world and kind of build a safe place there, a safe space, and as much as, we talk about safe space today, and that did not exist really in so many words in the 1970s. It just wasn't like that.
Yeah, you weren't allowed to talk about your emotions.
Yeah. Well, men aren't anyway, but still today. I had this place, I had this like safe space. And so I was able to create and draw and sketch and do all that stuff. And so that really made me good at it, made me from a very young age. I could trust my ability to do that, to communicate that way.
And so when you were in high school, were you focused a lot on art and photography and design courses?
Yep. Yeah, there weren't any design courses. There was architectural drafting, and and I love that course. It was a double credit or a double period, I guess. Yeah. And I did that for 2 years, and it was one of my favorite things. I built models of underground houses and things like that I explored.
Subterranean homes.
Subterranean homes,
Look
yes.
At that.
And when you're I don't know, 15 or 16, maybe 16, and you're challenged with drawing in perspective a spiral staircase.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, that's hard. But I figured it out, and it was pretty good, actually. Yeah, I think it worked out pretty well. So anyway, so that led me into studying interior design. I just, in my final year, it was either fine art, painting, because I was actually, it was one of my passions really was painting, drawing and painting, actually. So dry and wet media. And I had one of the teachers that was a guest sort of artist who was teaching us in our final year, took me aside and said, you should really consider a career in fine art. And I hadn't really, I guess, thought about that. And so it started a bit of a thought in my mind about what is it that I'd like to do? Do I want to get into interior design or architecture or fine art? But it is within that spectrum. There was no conversation about becoming an accountant or a lawyer or anything like that. And so that's my early sort of thing. And I actually settled on interior design as an applied art. And I settled on it because interior design is so full of possibilities to create not just space, and it's an interior or a volumetric kind of composition. Mm-hmm. When you think of a painter, if they're not a sculptor, but a painter, they're working in a two-dimensional space, creating a composition within a two-dimensional frame. Mm-hmm. Sculptors work three-dimensionally, but in a massive form. Architects work three-dimensionally, but in a massive form. And interior designers work from a volumetric perspective. So you think of the entire space, and you think, at least I think, of all the elements within the space and how they sort of react to one another. And I really like that. And I love furniture. I've loved furniture from the day I started. And I was a student at Ryerson School of Interior Design when it was a polytechnical institute, and when it still had the name Ryerson. Now it's Toronto Metropolitan University. That's right. And so TMU. And so, but when I then went there, it was quite practical. And so you built things, you built tables. I think it's still that way, actually. You build tables that you design, you build bridges to test the physics of weight and structure. And all of that was terrific. I just loved it. It was a great experience.
And it was a 4-year program?
Yep. 4-year program, degree.
Yep. And from there, what did you do? Did you go to another school, or did you start out in the career?
I started my career actually in second year. I was one of the lucky ones. My goodness. I got a job. I just walked in, cold call, my voice cracking. Hello, I'd like to apply for a job, kind of thing. And I walked into Gluckstein Design, and I actually worked through the summer that year after second year. And Brian was super busy, and I was his third employee. So there was just 3 of us in the room. And it was like, here, do this. And then he would have to go, and he would go gone from meetings. And so my job was like, come up with something interesting. So I do a full concept, and I would draw and draft it and the whole thing. Go back after that summer and say, to fellow students, yeah, what did you do this summer? I cleaned sample rooms. And I'm like, oh man, I designed this whole entertainment space and lower level of a place, and got a client's home, and they built it, and here's the pictures. And it was like, they were like, what? So that was extremely lucky. And then, so I graduated and I worked at Brian's, and it was a really good early career experience working there because it was at the time he had, and still today I'm quite sure, really terrific clients that trusted him and wanted something that was really complete in the way of design. So I in particular, what stands out to me are homes that had a home in particular that had a waterfall, had to design a waterfall. And the designing of the waterfall and the coordinating and making sure that, within the center of the house, and talking about humidity and talking about, how light can pass through it, because there were rooms on the other side of the waterfall that had light coming through them. It was quite beautiful, the filtered light that came through that. And but for that client too, took parts of the piano and actually altered them. So a bit of the structure of the piano and maintaining the resonance and sort of studying that sort of thing and understanding how that worked, to cutlery and silverware. We actually designed a whole set for them as a custom thing. So it was really, really interesting. So much of all the things that I think I was interested in being able to do when I thought of working in interior design, there it was. And that was very early in my career. So that gave me, learning very early how these things work, what makes them work, what are the qualities that you look for in an object or a space that makes it feel good. Mm-hmm. And that was early in my career.
It's interesting that one of the things that you said, and you really, really did a good job of brushing over it.
Oh,
yeah.
What?
Yeah, what? You said that you got lucky in working there. And I am a strong believer that luck is really an opportunity that is provided to someone that they're able to capitalize on. And I don't think you can diminish the abilities that you have in saying that you were lucky. I think there was an opportunity there, and you seized the opportunity. I'm saying that for you.
I kind of get that. And you're right. Was I lucky that I walked down the sidewalk holding my portfolio with a list of names? And was I lucky that I knocked on the doors? And was I lucky that I walked in and said, hi, here's my resume. Do you have any summer, face-to-face person? Yeah, it wasn't, so there's lots of ways of trying to dodge that. And so, yeah, that actually took a little courage. Yeah.
Right.
For a shy guy. Yeah.
And look, based on what you had said previously, I mean, you're talking about a time of in the world when it was hard to be a gay person, right? Openly.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the late 80s. So yeah, even then actually, but then it was a little better. Like growing up was hard.
Okay.
But that just gives you certain characteristics and, how you communicate and all that sort of thing. I think that, by the late 80s, it was a more accepting world. And as a young person, like I was 24.
So were you
when I graduated?
Were you still as introverted as you were earlier, or were you far more of an extrovert like you are now?
So you say I'm an expert now. I don't know.
Or what I know of you as an extrovert.
I am actually probably. The way I would describe myself, and this is going to sound strange, but I would describe myself as an introverted extrovert. Yeah.
I figured
because I was born an extrovert, and then I learned how not to be that, and then I had to relearn how to actually, be that sort of natural person I was when I was young. So I was pretty shy then. Yeah.
I'm saying that because there you are with your portfolio, and you're walking into this environment where it can be intimidating as a student, right?
Yeah.
And here you are walking in and saying, "Hey, look at me. I'm going to bring some value to your business. Put your trust in me." And that's a really, really hard thing to do at a young age.
I guess I didn't know whether pretty sure I wouldn't have used those terms, but you know what I learned is that I had a great deal of confidence and also a sense of I could trust my innate ability to see and do things, draw,
Right.
Conceive, and communicate those thoughts. And that was in my portfolio. My portfolio was, full of really interesting drawings, paintings, things that I had done. And I think that, when professionals saw that and a second year student, they were like, yeah, okay. And then even the projects that I had shown them, they needed to make a leap of faith that this person could actually, produce something that was going to be of value to the firm. And so, it takes a confidence, but so I had that kind of quiet confidence, let's say.
Right. Yeah. You let your work speak for you.
Yeah. And that was actually that's exactly how I'd put it. Yeah. I would not want to tell people. I would just let the work speak for itself, sort of thing. Yeah.
Okay. So you had worked there through, was it one summer? Or was it a few summers, or was this now full-time after school?
I worked full-time after school for 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you took a leap of faith?
Then it's a leap of faith. Yes. Yeah. And it was, kind of a combination of things. I think in a way I still had some artistic expression in my mind. And so, and in my desire to, I guess, create. And so I started a business doing products using Japanese paper. I would weave cards. I would do wedding invitations. And I even went beyond Japanese paper and got into leather products and so on for photographers. Because at the time they would have their book, photographers of all kinds would have a book, and the books, the black book, right, would land on editors' desks, and there would be stacks of them, like 15, and they would go through them one at a time. But the ones that stood out were the ones that sort of said something very individual. And I became a bit of a specialist in making them individual. I had some really fun, outlandish. I had fun creating them, fun getting into the conversations with the photographers, entering their studios, learning about their work, and helping them to express themselves through that. And if I think about it, I do that today. I've got clients today that come to me with a dream and an idea. And my job is to help them express themselves and who they are. In kind of a bricks and mortar, but also, I guess, drywall and carpets and knives and forks and spoons. Yeah. It's the same thing, really. And it's an interpretive skill. It's something that I learned, I think, at that point that, you interpret. And I really like that. I think in a way, maybe that might have been what was missing from my experience at Gluckstein's, was that I didn't exercise maybe then. I didn't know that I wanted to or needed to. It wasn't until afterward that I learned that was something that was really important to me, is to create spaces that were very individual and very particular. And it's one thing to have kind of a look and a feel. A lot of people think designers have a look or a feel. What's your look is a question I'll often get. And I like to say that I don't have one look. You could come to me and want a French chateau, and I can give you a French chateau, but I'm going to want to know why you want that French chateau, and what is it about a French chateau, or what elements about that French chateau is actually most interesting to you. Because for me, it isn't so much what you do, but why you do it. And not even why are you building a home for yourself? If you've done well and you'd like to express that, I think that's incredibly wonderful in life, and I think it's something that is really interesting. But it's not so why you're building. It's more like, why do you want to build what you want to build? What is it about that? What is the essential characteristic that you're after?
Right.
Because ultimately, all space is emotional. All space is feeling. So, and that's where I start usually with clients. Is I start with the first three, or the first question is actually asking for 3 adjectives that they'd like to use to describe the space or the overall feeling for their home. How do you want the space to feel?
So then what does it look like? You go on your own and you're talking now about process. And how do you now engage in some of your first clients, and what do those projects look like at the early stage of the practice?
With bathrooms and kitchens?
Yeah.
Bathrooms and kitchens, and
because that's where it all began.
And then slightly
kitchens.
Bathrooms. Clearly that's both very important places in the home. It's like people don't start in the living room; they start with the bathroom and the kitchen. Better bathroom. Then it became master bathrooms, and now we say primary bathrooms, and it's it just developed. I think it developed one step at a time. I feel in a way, maybe I'm going to call this luck, and then you're going to ask me why is that lucky, but lucky that it grew in a kind of methodical way, my career. And it wasn't like it was like suddenly doing some massive project and sink or swim. It was a slow kind of day by day, week by week, year by year kind of development. But yeah, and I started with 1 employee, then 2, then 3, and then we had to move out of the loft we were living in because it was like 4 or 5 people coming over, and we had to
where was the loft?
Space. I was at Dundas West and Roncesvalles, the Toronto Feather and Down factory.
Okay.
When you weren't allowed to live there, don't tell anybody.
That's okay. There are other people that I've spoken to that have also lived illegally or worked illegally out of units.
It is creative space. It is the kind of thing where it's like found space. There's something about you take a dusty place and you turn it into a home, and
you give it a purpose.
You give it a purpose, and it's open space. It was a really wonderful place to live, to be honest. And there were artists who lived downstairs and upstairs. And, within the building, I made many deep connections with very, very accomplished artists and sculptors and sculptors and photographers. It was a wonderful experience.
Okay. I mean, I don't see how it could be bad. You're in a space full of creatives and you're creating.
Yeah.
It sounds pretty remarkable.
Yeah. Yeah.
See, it's like the anti-COVID.
Yep. Yep.
Go lock yourself in a space by yourself.
Exactly. Now, yeah, you're right. It's certainly the creativity was there, and the and just being in a space where the conversations, with these artists is so much more meaningful, I think, because what they're engaged with is, I think, communicating meaning and thought through form, through paint. Lynn Donoghue was a very well-known painter who lived on the main floor, and we were just above her. And I would go down on Saturday mornings, and we would. There were 2 other women that came in from outside of the building. I would just go downstairs, but they would come in from outside of the building, and we would paint, and we would gossip, and we would just do our thing. But I learned so much about color.
I was just going to say, this is going to color.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Color, communication, the meaning of color, creating color, what should sit next to what. I mean, so much of color theory we learned in school, color theory, but then this was really about color communication, color emotion. She would ask the question, what's this painting about? And, we all knew it was a vase of flowers, but she said, it's not a vase of flowers. What is the painting about? Is this painting about light? Is this painting about fleshy form? Is it the leaf? Is it the petal? Is it the translucency? What is this painting about? What is the meaning of this? What is the point of this? And so she would have me ask myself those questions as I'm approaching these canvases. And I think that was probably one of my favorite experiences. Living in that building, but also one of my, let's call that one of my favorite educational experiences, because I learned so much from her.
Lynn Donoghue.
Yeah.
I'm going to go look up Lynn Donoghue.
You can see her work at the AGO.
Okay.
Yeah. Well. But Anne O'Callaghan, a sculptor, unbelievably brilliant woman. She would work in lead, among other things, just really interesting materials, manipulating it and shaping it and creating memoryscapes. If I can, I think she would be okay if I said it that way.
Well, that's your interpretation of what it is, right?
Well, she worked a lot with memory in terms of her work, and I if we call them landscapes, memoryscapes, the idea of it being a way of expressing how a space or a place or an idea sort of rests in your mind. Mm-hmm. Very interesting. So that's not, talking about, I don't know, a trend, or talking about a, I don't know, a carpet or a, wallpaper. I mean, it's really more about what is the purpose of each of these elements. And so when I take that and I apply it to my work, I think in terms of elements, I think in terms of composition, and I actually openly, with clients, explore those things together. Mm-hmm. And we'll talk about a notion of a particular product. I would say it's a carpet, and I would say, well, why that element is really the way I'll put the question, right, as opposed to another element on the floor, right? And is it acoustic? Is it, what's the impact on the space? And then texturally, how do we balance that? So we have these rather more abstract conversations, which I really believe that it leads to a much more richly textured, much more interesting space.
You have never been short of prose and diction in your ability to articulate.
Oh, thanks.
So it continues, and I can appreciate that, because in the projects that we have worked on together, there is a very, very real focus on the contrast of color, but then also how they liken to each other in the spaces that you've created. As I'm saying this, I'm visually thinking of the photography that we've had of some of the projects we've been on together.
Yeah.
So at what stage of the practice had you gone from working out of the legal space to now formalizing and going into a legal space? You said you had 5 staff at the time.
Yep.
What do you remember around what year this was, where you were moving into from that space in Ronceville?
So probably I could say 95 to 2000, something like that.
Okay.
And I moved physically to Cabbagetown in 1998, and then for 2 years I commuted back and forth to the Loft building. There was an office next door. A really good friend of mine, who actually is the person who told me about that space, and his name's Matthew Gibson, and he had a really cool sort of tech company, and he had space in his space. So we used that space and rented from him for a little while, and from that point we moved into Cabbagetown. In Cabbagetown, I love Cabbagetown. It's it's such a wonderful, warm, eclectic space.
Mm-hmm.
Series of old buildings. It really runs like a village. It doesn't feel like a piece of the city. It feels like a village unto itself.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who live there feel passionate about that. So I was walking past a corner store that had been, I think, bought and then renovated. And then I saw a for lease sign in the window, and I thought, oh, that's nice. I looked in the window, and Steve, my partner Steve, was there with me, and we were looking in the window, and I said, that looks like a good amount of space. It looks great. And so we called the real estate agent, and I said, I'm looking for about 1,000 square feet. And she said, oh, this is only 800 square feet. And I said, oh, that may not be quite big enough. And so I said, thank you. And then hung up. And then I walked by again, and I was with Steve again. And we said, no, it's not 800 square feet. It's 1,000 square feet. And so we called her back and said, can we visit it? And we told her, we did the dimensions, and she said, this is more like 1,100 square feet on the main floor. And she went, oh, really? Because somebody wanted that space just yesterday, and they couldn't take it because it wasn't big enough. And I said, well, I guess it's yours. So that's the story of it. And we've been there for 20 years now. In that space.
And so just to make sure that my math is correct, I'm actually not going to do the math. So the practice is at this stage, how old is the practice now?
Oh, now 27 years.
27 years.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and in that span, I assume you have had stages where you have staffed up, you've staffed down. Do you feel like there is a certain continuously, what's the right word? Correct. I don't know. Correct. Yeah. That's where I'm going to go. Correct.
Or
level
comfortable.
Comfort level with staffing.
So I have had as many as 15, which is too many for me. I find that I like to be connected with everybody in the office and be able to have meetings with everybody in the office.
Right.
And so the sweet number for me is 10, staff of 10. And I've had up and down anywhere between 8 and 12 and 10. So we're bouncing around 10, and that's just the perfect number.
And what roles do you have within the office?
Me?
Yeah.
You
and your staff.
Oh, okay. Oh, the different roles.
Yeah.
So again, because as an owner, you have roles.
You have many hats.
You have roles. What roles do I have there? You got roles, more than one, and those are the most of those roles you don't learn in school. How to do accounting, how to hire, all that sort of thing. It's all quite challenging. You have to learn it all just by doing it. You learn by doing, and so different roles. So I've got about 5 in the design department. I've got 2 in purchasing. I've got Christine who does finance, and I've got Kurt part-time who does all of our IT Oh, it's amazing. And Christina, finance. I say Christina in finance, and Christina is so much more than that. She does our finance. She started with me at the age of 26, and that was 17 years ago, and doing just bookkeeping for us. And she got it all cleaned up and organized, and new systems in. And then she said, "What else can I do?" And so we talked about doing employee management. What's that called?
HR?
HR, yes. And so she's doing all the HR, and she's really good at it. You know, we've got new ideas around how to hire, who to hire, when to hire, how to anticipate the need. So we have now systems in place where we are analyzing flow of work in, flow of work out on a monthly basis. We talk about that, and when we anticipate needing new staff, and if we take on any more projects, what would the nature of that staff be, and that sort of thing. And now she's also involved in marketing. And may I just say that if you're going to have one person doing finance, have the same person do the marketing, because marketing is a really difficult thing to sell to a finance person. Marketing as a concept, and the cost of it, and do you really need to, et cetera, et cetera. So, but because Christina, has a deep appreciation of both, we have a good balance in the office. So really terrific. Gordana in my office is, she is, I call her my creative director, and she has years of experience, a background in fashion, and knowledge, like so much knowledge about fabrics and materials and furnishings, and also just what's happening in the world of fashion, what's happening in the world of interior design and trends and color trends and all of that sort of thing. There's just that kind of full kind of knowledge that comes into, and continually, by the way, changing knowledge, like they're just keeping up with it all the time.
So great. Tell me, like, what does that look like? Is this just an absorption of all that is happening through different mediums, or is this as a result of travel to different countries and cities to be able to engage with artisans and the curators of this? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think it's actually a combination of the two. I think traveling, when you really want to differentiate in your industry, you need to travel. You need to get out of this pond and into another pond to see what's happening there. So going to, Italy and France and the UK, I think for us, at least in particular, being in the Puce de Saint-Ouen, Paris, understanding the breadth and range of the quality materials that are available there, working with artisans from all over the world at any given time. It really is something that makes it deepens, I think, the artistic material quality of what you can do. And it's what you bring to your clients, as opposed to going to something that's just down the street. Mm-hmm. You're going a little bit further than that. And there are some wonderful things that are brought in the city of Toronto, but we get maybe parts of really good things here. And if you go to New York or LA or London or Paris, you see so much more. There's just that much more. There's in a way, culturally, you go to Paris, for example, you may really admire that product, and then you realize that product comes out of this body of being, this way that Parisians look at things. When they think about the quality and nature of a piece of furniture, they are studying every aspect of comfort for that piece. And it's the layback, it's the quality of the material, it's how much it receives you, as opposed to literally some pieces of furniture feel like they push you out. So thank you very much, please go. But a piece of furniture should receive you. It's like, hey, come on, have a seat. And
come here.
Exactly. And so, that is a thing. And so I think that, they study those things to a great depth, and you don't always get that here. Big brands don't necessarily spend the time and effort to understand what it should feel like in the body. Mm-hmm. They understand what it should look like to the eye. And I think it's a very different experience.
And so are you in the professional development of the staff, or are they coming with you on trips, or are you bringing people into the office as well to engage in like lunch and learns and other forms of development? How does that work for you?
We do all of that. I think the big trips, I think we haven't gone yet with everybody in the staff. Usually Gordana and I have gone to gather information and bring it. And then we do have lunch and learns. We do have trips out for everybody in the office. I think that may be in our future though too, to actually, you know what, like you need those experiences, not just me and not just Gordana to build on knowledge, but for them to actually develop that appreciation, understanding. So encouraging travel. So yeah, you know, I see that in our future.
Mm-hmm. And yourself, I know that you're very much an artiste and you care a lot about all these things that you've talked about, but I know the process is also very important to you.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the things that we had talked about while we were having lunch, and wanted to go and delve a little bit into the process. Yeah. So what does the process of design look like for your practice?
I think it goes back to, and we touched on parts of this, I think, but it goes back to when I was developing those portfolios for photographers, and I was interpreting and understanding, you know, who they are, what their work was like, and how can that be expressed through a book. You know, is that book covered in fun fur? Is that book covered in leather, or is that book covered in some other stainless steel? You know, if their work is edgy, does that make sense? So there's a kind of a physical, emotional kind of connection. You pick up a steel covered book and you get like a vibe from that. And so I would say that my process started there. It started through that artistic experimentation phase that I went through. And even though I studied interior design, then I went away from it for that period of time. And then I came back to it. I came back to it because I think that it is still really the first thing that I love and have always loved. You know, it's like developing space and so on. But home has always been a thing that's been of interest to me. So when you talk about designing home, I mean, in a way, you could say that it's the weirdest thing in the world to have somebody else tell you how to live. You know, and I would say that I agree, because that person isn't really telling you how to live. You're telling that person how you like to live. And what that person is doing is helping you to interpret what that means through physical things. So how you like to live. And so then very material nature. So for me, when we talk about process, when I sit down with a client at the very beginning, I touched on the fact that we talk about the 3 emotive descriptors, those 3 words that you would use to describe how you want this space to feel. And then even individually, how you like each space to feel. A kitchen is different than maybe a master bedroom, primary bedroom as a place, as an emotional experience. And that leads to helping people kind of break down already. You're starting right there when you're asking not for a picture of what it is that you would like it to look like. You're asking them for how you want it to feel, and you're challenging them with 3 descriptions, because 2 seems to be pretty easy and pretty, you know, I'd like it to be light and I'd like it to be fresh. But beyond 2, then you're starting to really think a little bit more. Oh gosh, you want another one. Okay. What's that 3rd one going to be? And I swear to you, the 3rd one is the one that is the magic one. It's the one that I think that because of the time thinking about it and discussing it, then it becomes the one that actually really gives the essence to the space that is different, that is unique, that it gives it, it informs it in a way that no one else will do.
And these are just, you're looking for individual words?
I am. Yeah. Individual emotional words.
So what have been some of the more interesting words that you've described?
I'll tell you the ones that are not allowed.
Okay.
Functional is not allowed. Now, how does that make you feel?
I mean, great. Everything's supposed to be functional anyway.
Right.
Like the most basic answer.
It's going to work. Yeah. And elegant. Really? Elegant is not allowed.
Yeah. Okay.
How does elegant make you feel? I mean, it may make you feel a certain way, but it will be elegant in a way that it you know is going to be well resolved, is going to et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know. I find those 2 words are words that you can't use. I think it has to be something that's a little bit more meaningful to you. So it could be warm. Warm is often used, and so that warm versus cool. So like that takes us in a direction. You know, it can be light and warm. Okay, that's interesting. You know, it could be light and cool. It could be, you know, could it be cool and warm? It could be a cool space.
Do you getting adjectives, or do you get nouns too?
I don't get nouns. I get adjectives.
Interesting. Okay.
And what would be a noun that you would use to describe the emotion?
New York.
Oh yeah, right on. Okay, yeah, that's vibe.
Right? There's a vibe to New York.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I would totally buy that. And no one's tried that.
Okay.
Okay, hopefully they will now.
I don't know. I'm thinking.
Or sometimes you get like, New York meets Dubai or something like that.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, wow, you've got different vibes, and how would the two of them sort of meet? And then, you pretty much have to consult Midjourney for that one.
I would
with an
say
AI
so.
solution.
You're gonna have to unpack a little bit more on that one.
Yeah, but that's interesting. But yeah. So yeah, sometimes we do that. Yeah, there's vibe, and vibe, is a word that I really like, because vibe is a lot. It talks about how you feel in the space. When it's a cool vibe, it's a general term, so it doesn't really talk about a particular kind of emotional experience, but it talks about the resonance of a space. It's got some sort of almost a musical quality to me. The vibe of a space. It has a certain frequency within which it sort of vibrates, and so that can be a very chill vibe. That can be a very energetic vibe. And so we talk a lot about rhythm in our work in interior design. Like, rhythm in the space is not necessarily just pattern. It's the relative mass of things. If everything is very leggy and very light, then there's going to be a very kind of almost like a staccato kind of a rhythm to it, versus something that's very rounded and grounded, and then it's going to have a kind of a bass, kind of a kind of thing. So there's like, music is like, it's a way of describing space, and I see it, and and I think it's fun to explore, because sometimes people really resonate with that, and every way that you try to make a space individual for people is finding out how they like to express themselves. Mm-hmm. Some people they do it through numbers. Maybe there's a way of making it sort of mathematical or calculated, or just very maybe clean. I don't know. But there's different ways. But I'm always open to it. I'm always curious to know how they do it, and it's fun to challenge people across the boardroom table, and then just either watch them be wide open and curious and interested in it, or kind of fold their arms across their chest and sort of turn in a little bit and wonder. And then you ask them, so what is it about that makes you uncomfortable? Because you just totally like showed body language. And then they unfold their arms immediately. It's like, oh, no, it's fine. It's fine. But then they say, well, but maybe this is like not the direction I was thinking. And it's like, oh, great. Then let's talk about that. Let's talk about what that should be then, and how can that be? And that's a way of establishing a kind of open dialogue.
Right.
It's not me saying this is right, this is wrong. I find very often people come into the office, into the process, into the building of the dream, for themselves, with a preconceived idea. They come in with you're the designer and you're the one that knows this, and I don't know about this. So therefore I'm going to either pretend that I know about this. I'm going to tell you what I want, as opposed to maybe ask what would be the best, or how do we make this a dialogue, and so preconceived notions are something that I'm sort of trained to hear,
right,
to get a sense of, and what I do with that is I just ask more questions. Mm-hmm. I don't want it to be this or that. No, then my first question is, why not? What is it about that and I want to say this, I mean, an example, I don't want it to be austere. So what is it about austerity that is, something that you don't like? And are there spaces that you've been, or is it a home, or is that just because sometimes, knowing what you don't want is almost as important as knowing what you do want.
Of course. Yeah. That's going to help steer you in a direction that's not going to upset them.
Absolutely. Yeah. You absolutely, it helps give shape to everything.
Yeah.
And so, so knowing what direction, but also to go into, but also where to avoid is really good. And so, so that's how those conversations develop. And that's how we like to open those conversations and have them be open conversations. Mm-hmm. And for people to know that there's no right or wrong, there's no mistake, there's no, you didn't express it the right way. No, the answer is you expressed it the way you did, because that's what made sense for you in that very moment. So that is the thing that's really helpful and useful to know. Mm-hmm. Expression. But yeah, that's a bit of it.
So tell me, you're at a stage of your career where you've been involved in many projects over the years. Is there a sweet spot of number of projects that you want to take on, or is there an unlimited number of flow that you could we'll take that on too?
Oh,
How
well,
does that work for you?
there is an appropriate amount of
Yeah.
work for 10 people.
Okay.
And when you stretch beyond that, you're stretching the capacity for those people to do a really good job.
Yes.
And, no one wants to be forced to work super long hours, and that's just because too much work was taken on and no one really thought about it. So like I said earlier, Christina and I, we have these conversations about how much work we have, how many people we have to do the work, and are we light on work? Are we needing more work, or are we approaching capacity, and like we need to sort of slow down in terms of what we take on? And yeah, and it informs the conversations that we have with potential clients, in as much as we know, it's either now is a good time, or, and often it is, because what that really means is that if there's 15 projects on the books at the moment, or 20, they're all at different stages. So There'll be a point where there may be this project on, but no one in the design department is necessarily touching it at that point, and they'll have a need for other things to be able to do. So yeah.
Okay. And beyond the practice,
Yeah.
the human side of this.
I don't like fishing, and I'm a terrible killer.
So what we know for sure is that above the fireplace inside of your home, there is no award-winning fish.
There will not be. No,
but it might be on a plate.
I just once tried it, and it was just terrible. I couldn't kill a fish, and someone had to take over and just help me, because it was I couldn't stun the fish. I don't know, it was horrible. We all felt bad.
So what do you do? What are some of the things that you really enjoy doing outside of your practice to help take your mind off of it all?
I write, actually. I write, and I just actually graduated from U of T, and they're continuing ed in creative writing, and that was fantastic. I mean, I started before COVID, actually, and COVID became this massive opportunity where here's some time.
Right.
Why don't you do this? And all of it was online. I didn't have any live classes because of when that happened.
Yep.
And I learned an enormous amount about communication, about, the richness of words and the use of metaphor, all of those things, really, really terrific in communication. And so, and in that, I reignited my love for poetry. I decided to do my final in poetry as opposed to in some other aspect in creative writing. And it's led me to a few things that have happened in my life. My dad had passed away in 2019, just after I started the writing courses, actually, because I started in, say, September, and he passed away in November of that year. And so through the courses, I started to explore the complex emotions that I had around my dad, which led me to wonder about the story of his father, who was found dead by the side of the road with 2 bullet wounds in his body, one in to his head, and one through his chest. Yeah. And it was like, how did that happen? It's like, well, actually there was a tribunal and they decided it was suicide. And no one believes that it could be, because you have to really ask yourself what sort of trauma with a .32 caliber rifle, which can kill a deer from 600 feet away. You have this rifle and you just shot your face with it. And that was the first wound, which was not life-threatening. The life-threatening wound was to his chest. And so you have to imagine the blood and the gun being kicked away if you're 20 feet away, sort of thing. How do you even conceive of that? So that started to raise questions for me. And so that led me to reach out to my aunt, my dad's sister. And that led us down a journey of writing a memoir and a bit of story about family. And as I've been doing the memoir, I've been learning a whole lot more about myself and my relationship to those family characteristics. It's just so interesting, so amazingly rich and interesting.
I remember when you were north a couple of years ago, and you were engaging in the conversation and getting the records.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's so. Yeah, I mean, if you ever get a chance, sit down with a forensic police officer. There's such interesting things that they know. Yeah, and we learned a lot. But and so that whole investigation for me has been very, very rich and very, very rewarding, connecting me certainly much closer to the memory of my dad, but also knowing a little bit more about him. Just getting a sense of rather I would say, as men are emotionally distant, but no less feeling person. Yeah. And so so for me, it was really good. One of the biggest things that I learned relative to my dad and specific to me was, even though I had the childhood that I described to you, which, wasn't all sad, but it was definitely, flavored by
Muted.
yeah, yeah, muted. Yeah, it was a muted tone, but it was colored by the experiences of being bullied and how I changed my personality to sort of suit the world that I knew was not right in their opinion and their ideas. But what was interesting to me, and what I didn't realize until I started this work, was that my dad himself never tried to change me. My dad never, ever made me feel bad for doing things the way that I would do them. So it wasn't like they would buy me a baseball mitt and try and make me a boy and, want to do sports and so on. It was almost the opposite of that. He wanted me to be the best person I could be. And that was to be honest, to be loyal, to be kind, to have those characteristics. So it was really amazing.
It's one of the first times I've had discussions with people or someone on here and started to develop some mist in my eyes because you lost your father just before I had lost mine.
Yeah.
And a lot of those characteristics that you're describing are very similar to those that I experienced as well. And I can appreciate them.
Yeah.
In the ways that we can. So I would, I mean, deviating from that, it was almost an injustice to the description you just gave.
No, that was amazing. Yeah.
But I guess maybe you just recently also talked to me about how you lost your mom.
Mm-hmm.
And so here you are and you're creating your memoirs, and how incredible of an opportunity to be able to do your family some justice.
Yeah.
Then to be able to put it all to print.
Yep.
Right.
That's to me. Yeah. May that happen. If there are any publishers out there, no, just, but it really is powerful to do that. And I think that, not everybody gets a chance to really examine their life in that way. And the experience of writing, the experience of physically telling the story is a real challenge, but it's also a really rewarding experience, because you do find inside what you think is the answer isn't the answer. The answer is just behind it, and you just never knew.
Yeah, you just got to peel a few more layers back.
Yeah. And it really gives so much more. So I just find that the experience of writing has been really, really rich for me.
And you don't experience life alone. You've referenced someone else,
Stephen.
Yeah. And how long have you been together?
36 years.
Amazing.
So funny how, the kid growing up, gay people, you were destined to a sad and lonely life. And that was the idea in the 1970s. And it's quite amazing. 36 years later, after meeting Steve, I mean, when we met, we wrote our own way that we wanted to be, in terms of the nature of our relationship and how we support each other. We're like, we have our own lives, but we also have our together lives. And I think that there's a great beauty in that, and that we support each other in whatever life gives us, individually or together, and how we've sort of shaped our relationship. And I just think he's the most wonderful guy, really. To this day, 36 years, it's just no change in how much I think he's been very patient with me, because I think I've been very difficult. I'm less difficult now, but stress and tension and so on. I mean, those remnants really of the anxiety that I would have from even, just my childhood and relating to people and so on. It's like, he was very, very cool, very calm with all of that and understanding of all of that. And so I think it's been a terrific time together.
I will say, after we had first spoken years back, I remember hanging up the phone and I gave Bruce a call, and I was like, oh, I really like Jeffrey. He's got an energy to him that really not many people have. And I was like, we've got to find a way to be able to work with him. I think what he's going to bring forward is going to really push us. And over the last few years of getting to know you and chatting with you on the phone and talking about things, literally in the middle of when you were up north and acquiring those records and talking to you about that and talking about property that you had and wanting to develop and selling of your condo.
Yeah.
I feel you have really empowered people that you get to work with. I know that from your staff. I know that from the experience that we've had in working with you. I will say wholeheartedly that you are good people.
Thank you.
And if you are unfamiliar with Jeffrey's ability to draw, which he has referenced throughout this, you should go to his Instagram page, because on his Instagram page, you will see how he has drawings in 3D with a pen on paper and what it looks like and how it translates into what is built.
Yeah.
And it is not just of a room. It is of furniture that is designed. It is of a drape that is going to come across and close out or the window, or a sheer. There are so many fine details that come out through his creative mind that go onto paper or into construction documents that you need to work from.
Cool.
He wasn't expecting that I was going to say all of this, but
No.
I'm saying it anyways. So,
Thank you, man. It's great. I mean, it's like, I think it's so I guess for me, it's an essential part of the process. I communicate that way. I speak that way in a way. And I sit in meetings with clients or on job sites, and to every guy that I've ever worked with on a job site, they're like, the room goes quiet when I start sketching the idea out and everyone's watching. And then I turn it upside down because I have to explain it. And then I'm drawing upside down and they're like, whoa, that's incredible. It's one thing to be able to do that, but really the value of it is that everybody is in that shared experience in that same moment. You know, when I'm with clients at a boardroom table, I'm not showing them what their house is going to be like. They're part of the process of it being built conceptually. And I think that is inclusive, and that is very much an essential part of how I like to work, who I am, and how I like to work, and extends to, you know, people who work with me on projects, the staff, everybody at the office, and artists that we get to work with, and all that sort of thing. It's like it's a dialogue. Everything is a dialogue, I think.
Look, we are all people, and we've all got our individual story, and I appreciate you taking the time to tell yours, because it's fantastic. And I truly hope that someone somewhere who's listening to this, or someone that we know that is connected in some way to a publisher, ends up taking you up on the offer and says, like, let's publish this memoir, because I know that I would love to read it.
Awesome. Amazing. Well, thanks.
Thanks.
Get the first copy.
Thanks for taking the time out of your busy day and coming and doing this and sharing it all with us. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.